at the trade desk. This is our first meetup of the year. We're going to listen to some pretty cool talk on the trade desk, and then we're going to dive into a reInvent recap. You might have noticed that there's some gift bags up the back for the reInvent recap, and also some awesome gifts from the trade desk. So that's pretty amazing. If you'd like to sort of, grab a seat or find somewhere to sort of just hang for a second and, sort of listen in to some awesome talks tonight, that'd be really cool. Like I said, my name's Sathyajith. I've been running this meetup for about 5 years. Also got a pretty awesome conference called Data Eng that we run each year. We're looking to host that again this year, hopefully this time in 4 cities, and doing some multi-tracks in Sydney. So that should be really, really good fun. So stay tuned for when that's going to be announced. But in the meantime, I wanted to really say a big thanks to the trade desk, to Barbara and Dania tonight for sponsoring the meetup and hosting us at their wonderful venues. Sydney, I'd like to thank Sydney for putting on some amazing weather for us, an amazing view tonight as well. I'm joking. Our first 2 speakers, Abhishek Banerjee, Senior Software Engineer, and we have also with him Tynan Young, Senior Engineering Manager at the Trade Desk. They're going to talk about real-time bidding platform in advertising and the Petabyte data challenges. That sounds pretty amazing and pretty intense as well. I think probably first of all, we would like to know a little bit more about the Trade Desk, who you are, what sort of type of work that you do here, and that'll probably set the scene pretty well for this awesome talk of yours. Round of applause for Tynan.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, so we will talk about the Trade Desk, but I'm actually going to provide some context about what we do throughout this entire presentation. So we'll hold off on that. But just wanted to say welcome, thank you. Someone told me that Australian Survivor and Married at First Sight came out yesterday, and today's the 2nd episode. So we're all missing out on some reality TV to be here. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the drinks. But just some intros. I'm Tynan. I'm an engineering manager. I've been at the Trade Desk for about 5 years now. My details are on the screen. I love Linux. Find me on LinkedIn. Shoot me a message. Also love beer. Also love coffee. And I'm always happy to have a chat. So shoot me a message and we can talk some tech. And Abhi.
Hi guys, I'm Abhishek Banerjee. You can call me Abhi for short. I joined the Trade Desk about 4.5 years back, and I'm part of the data services team here. And just like Tynan, I like beer and coffee as well, but I love data as well. So happy to chat about data, happy to connect on LinkedIn. Talk soon.
Cool, thanks Abhi. I feel like loving data, he's in good company here. But yeah, like I mentioned, I'm going to talk about Trade Desk, the real-time bidding platform that we have, Programmatic, and then Abhi, who you probably really want to listen to, he's going to talk about the challenges that we have and just a glimpse into the future. It's petabyte and it's in the trillions. But before we do that, are we good? Also, if you can't hear me, just raise your hand because I have a bit of a, yeah, this is as high as it goes. I will try and project, but is this better? Okay. Cool. If I do trail out, just raise your hand and I'll try and shout again. But yeah, I want to provide some context about what we do first, or what is Programmatic, before I hand it over to Abhi. So to do that, I need to talk about how marketing has evolved. If you think about the traditional way of marketing, if you see Mad Men, that does a really, I think if I touch the bottom, it's going to do that, so I'll try not to do that. But if you think about Mad Men, if you've seen that, that paints a really good picture about what marketing used to be. So it was very narrow: print media, newspaper, TV, radio, etc. What if I try sitting down and not moving as much? Because that feedback is surely annoying back there. But yeah, so that's the traditional way of advertising. And if we move into the digital way of advertising, ever since the internet came about, advertisers had to change their strategy, moving away from that traditional media type into the way of the internet. So thinking about like podcasts, streaming, which is happening over there, audio, video. ads on websites, those sorts of things. So digital advertising has really opened the scope up that advertisers have to deal with in the entire ecosystem. And we're going to talk about specifically programmatic. And we'll go into that in a little bit more, but that's just a little bit narrower scope in the digital advertising ecosystem. Before we jump into that, let's do a quick quiz. So this is going to be pretty simple. We were successful before. You're just going to raise your hand if it's yes, and then lower your hand if it's no. So raise your hand if you've used the internet to browse free website content, so news, financial. I would expect most hands to go up, which is what I'm seeing. Okay, good. What about if you've used the internet to watch free streaming services, catch-up TV, random cat videos, Australian Survivor, Married at First Sight? Yep, good. What about if you use the internet to listen to free streaming services, so podcasts? Cool. Free, not free, yeah. Sometimes that's the case. And then lastly, raise your hand if you think these are pointless questions. Okay. Some honest people, and then everyone else is too polite. So the reason for this is, yeah, like these might seem like pointless questions because that's what the internet is for, right? You go on, you get free content, you know, you might do some shopping while watching a streaming service. And raise your hand with any of those questions before, then you've consumed what we call the free and open internet. And so what that means is, I think the quote on the bottom right does a really great job at explaining what that is, which is, at its best, the internet is an open marketplace of ideas, content, and commerce. And I think that's really impactful. And if you think about, you know, what that really means is, no matter who you are, what your demographic is, where you live, you have access to the exact same content as everybody else. So it puts everyone on an even playing field. And naturally, these content creators, so the publishers that create this free content, they need to generate some revenue because they have to pay their content creators. And this is all done through relevant advertising. So if we look at the top left quote, the two last sentences, it says, all these amazing online experiences thrive on an open internet, and they're all fueled by relevant advertising. And so, you know, that's what the Trade Desk does, and that paints a bit more context about programmatic, which we'll go into next. So we'll do a quick crash course on programmatic. Now, programmatic and ad tech is an extremely complicated industry. So if you come away with just, you know, 101 information, then that's a thumbs up from me. As engineers, we always ask the question, you know, start with why. What is the problem statement? And so I'm going to do exactly that. And if you think about the advertising landscape today, there's hundreds of touch points. So I have my phone, I've got my work laptop, I have a computer at home, I have a tablet, I watch streaming services, I, you know, listen to radio online, etc. And with all of those touch points, it's just a really difficult thing for advertisers to do, is to just tell a cohesive story across all of those touch points. So in the old landscape, it was a lot easier because before the internet, the advertising landscape was narrow. Now it's very wide, a lot more touch points, harder for advertisers to tell that cohesive story. So that's the why. And now if we talk about, you know, the solution, how we fix that, Trade Desk is an example of a media buying platform. And what that really means is, you know, we leverage technology like programmatic to help advertisers reach their target audience. And so at its core, programmatic is the automated buying and selling of all digital media ads across all screens. So like that, all those touch points, you know, we can automate advertising across all of those touch points. And the way in which that happens is that ads are bought and sold in a digital auction in real time. So across all of the internet with programmatic, these ads, they're bought and sold in real time. Now, I don't think that completely ties the picture together. So we're going to go through a real world example here. Can we see that? Yeah? Okay. It's a little bit small, but we will persevere. So Monica is a user of the internet. She likes to consume content from the New York Times, which is a premium news provider. they publish free content, but obviously they need to generate some revenue. So New York Times will partner with what's known as an SSP or a supply side platform. In this example here, we've chosen Index Exchange, and New York Times will send a request to that SSP every time a user visits the New York Times website, and then that SSP will hold an auction in real time on their behalf. So in this example, the SSPs partner with DSPs or demand side platforms, and I've chosen the Trade Desk as an example, Verizon Media as an example, and MediaMath. And then just like in any auction, those DSPs will place a bid, and then the highest bidder wins. Continuing on with this example, Verizon Media will place a bid for $2.20 per 1,000 impressions because they have a client which wants to show an ad to Monica because she lives within 3 kilometers of a grocery store. MediaMath bids $1.80 because they have a client that wants to show an ad to Monica because she abandoned a shopping cart a couple of days ago. And then the Trade Desk bids $3 because they have a client that wants to show an ad to Monica because she's in the right demographic. So right age group, is a mum, and likes reading premium news content. And so like you can guess, the Trade Desk then wins. Monica gets to view the content for free, and then that ad gets shown to Monica, and then money flows through the entire pipeline there so that the New York Times can generate some revenue. That's it from me. So that's just a little bit of context about the sort of data problems that we have, and Abby's going to go into a lot more detail with that. And then we'll also leave some time at the end for Q&A if anyone has any questions. So awesome. Over to you, Abby.
Thanks, Tynan. Yes, so after that overview from Tynan about how typically the programmatic workspace, programmatic industry works. Sorry, Danny had told me I'm very soft. Okay, so after the overview of programmatic, I'm going to talk a bit about the different players in the programmatic ecosystem, where we fit in, and how we add value to the advertisers. And at the end, I'm going to talk about some of the technical challenges that we face and just pick up one of them and see how we solve them. So the diagram you see over there is the different players which are in the programmatic ecosystem. Tynan talked about the user, Monica, the publisher, the supply side platform. I'm going to talk about the right side of the diagram. So we'll start from the advertiser. So let's say Pizza Hut, they come up with a new type of pizza, maybe better than this one, and they feel that they want to promote it in the Sydney CBD on weekdays for lunch. So there are multiple parameters we're talking about here. One is the Sydney CBD, weekdays, and during lunchtime. So now Pizza Hut, they are very, very good in making pizzas, but they don't know anything about advertising. So what do? They go to the advertising agencies like WPP, Publicis, and say, hey, we want to launch a campaign. Please, could you come up with the advert for that? Now, the agencies, they're very good at making advertising content, but they don't know anything about who to show those ads to. And that's where we come in. So what the agencies do is they create something called an advertising campaign in our platform. And just like Pizza Hut, we have hundreds of thousands of such advertising campaigns running in our system at any given point in time. Now, tying everything up together, Monica opens the New York Times, but we are talking about Sydney CBD. So let's say the Sydney Morning Herald. So Monica opens Sydney Morning Herald, and she gets to see some ads. Now, as a user, you wouldn't want to wait for a long time to see ads, right? So you would want to just open the website and see whatever, and the ads should show up immediately. You don't want to wait for a long time for the web page to open. Now, what we have described here is pretty much the user experience every second of the day. And so this pretty much shows the entire internet, and we get to see what is happening across the internet second by second. Now, having given that information, I have a question for you guys. Can anyone guess how many messages we see in a minute? Just a wild guess. Yep. You're close. Sorry? All right. So every second, we see about 14 million messages every second. Now, one fun fact for you guys. All the industries around the world, for them, Q4 is the time when they relax. But in the advertising industry, Q4 is the time when we have to be sharpest. The reason being, Q4 is when we have multiple large events like Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and we see many, many advertisers who want to showcase their stuff, and many users want to buy stuff. So that basically means that we have many more opportunities in Q4 to make best use of our advertisers' dollars than other times of the year. So typically we see about 14 million messages per second, but in Q4 that goes up to 17 million, or maybe even higher.
Is that on the internet? Like where exactly?
Yes, so we get requests. So when, like Tynan explained, Monica opens Sydney Morning Herald or New York Times. Likewise, when there are large events, you would probably be opening multiple websites and buying stuff. And that's when we get to have more opportunities to show ads. And that's why our QPS is higher in Q4 than in other times of the year. So given this setup, there are a few challenges, technical challenges specifically. The first one is, before that, one more question. Can you guess how much time we have to within which we need to respond to the supply side platform?
200 milliseconds.
Sorry?
200 milliseconds.
You're very close. Just double. So we have 100 milliseconds. So we have a timeline of 100 milliseconds within which we need to respond to each and every one of those 17 million requests. And we need to do it over and over and over again. The reason being, if we miss out on that 100 millisecond window, we'll miss out on the opportunity to bid for that inventory. So we basically are leaving money on the table if we don't respond in time. So given the throughput and the latency requirements, it presents a lot of challenges to make this setup work again, over and over again across multiple days and throughout the year. So some of them include how do within our data processing system, and they need to be fed into our machine learning models, and those machine learning models will then again feed back into the bidding system to improve decisioning. So this feedback loop for us is extremely critical because that's how we improve our system day in, day out, and that's how we improve the way we spend our advertiser dollars. So having said that, I will briefly talk about our data pipeline. So as I was saying, we have multiple endpoints wherein we get the data sources from that flows via our data pipeline to multiple different repositories like data stores, machine learning models, the graphs, etc. And some of the challenges we face is how do we process and load 1 billion rows every minute in a lossless manner? How do we ensure that we are billing correctly to our partners? And how do we ensure that everything runs seamlessly and obviously have it HA resistant, etc. This is a bit of a deep dive of the same thing. Now, even though I say it's a deep dive, there are 100 more components within this application setup, but I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm basically going to talk about a few high-level stuff that should inform the rest of the discussion. So again, this is a carryover from this diagram. So we have got the endpoints. The static data you see at the bottom left of the screen is where we have our campaigns. So if you remember, I talked about advertising agencies setting up campaigns within our platform. That is static data for us. What happens is the endpoints, they process all the messages, and those messages are stored in cloud storage. So we are heavy users of S3, AWS S3. We also use Azure, and we have started to use Alibaba. Now, the logs that are loaded into the cloud storage goes to multiple stages data processing. And some of them are at the individual file level, some are at the aggregated level. So our challenge was, how do we ensure that we are able to process all these logs without losing any data, and at the same time in a timely fashion? So our response was to build our own state machine. So we have built our own in-house state machine, and that is a critical part of our whole application. And that basically allows us to not only process logs in a timely fashion when things are good, but also allows us to reprocess files if there is some problem or error or whatever. What happens is, there are multiple outputs of the multiprocessor, multi-stage data processing. One of them goes to a data store, which is Vertica. If you are not familiar with it, Vertica is a columnar database. And we have managed to break it multiple times, mainly because of the scale of data we deal in. And having done that, we have got a very good relation with Vertica, and we inform a lot of their product prioritization. So yeah, that helps. And we also, so what Vertica is basically our source of truth. It flows into the UI, our reporting, billing, etc. The other thing we also have is we have a Kafka and Flink model, which basically creates the files to be ingested by our machine learning models. And the ML models do their processing and then feed back into static data to improve the campaign setup. Therefore, we're able to buy more effectively. So that's a high-level overview, although it's a deep high-level overview of the data pipeline we have in place. Now, here are some rough numbers of the amount of stored data we store. So we store raw events as well as aggregated events. So for the raw events, we have a look-back window between 5 and 90 days, depending on the type of data we are processing. And that is up to 750 billion rows, which is 350 terabytes. The aggregated data, which is persisted forever, is up to 35 trillion rows and up to 2 petabytes. And these are just approximate numbers, not exact. The cluster size is our Vertica cluster, and currently it is 7,000 cores with 110 terabytes of memory. And we still are having to add nodes more often than not. Especially in Q4, we have to add nodes. Now, having talked about all of this, 35 trillion rows, 750 billion rows, 2 petabytes of data, I just wanted to give you an idea of how that looks, how big or small we are compared to trillions. So I didn't do this. The rest of the slides are not mine. I just nicked it from the internet, so disclosure there. So this is $10,000 with $100 bills. It's very small. You can have it in your palm, at the palm of your hand, easy. This is how 1 million looks like, and the person there, I don't know how tall he is, but yeah, let's say he's an average height. This is 100 million, still okay, goes up to his waist. This is $1 billion. This is how $1 billion look like compared to the person. It's sizable. Yeah, you can fit it into a room. This is $1 trillion. Can you find the person? Is it the top left? Is the bottom left corner still standing there? But this is how $1 trillion looks like. And we have got 35 of this in our system right now. Not many, but number of rows. So yeah, I just wanted to give you a visualization of how $1 trillion looks like. Therefore, we can think about what 35 trillion would look like. That's pretty much what I had. I'll just now hand over back to Tynan to talk about what we are doing next.
I have to do a shameless plug that we are hiring. Barbs, can you well, Barbs and Daniel are here. Yes. If anything that we said sounds interesting, feel free to go have a conversation with them because we are hiring. You can check out all of our open recs at careers.thetradedesk.com. Or if you want to have a chat, yes. They're great to chat to. Okay, do we have time for Q&A? Or
Yeah, I think we can do a couple of questions.
if there's any questions, we can answer them.
Seasonal effects. So you said Q4 is different from the other quarters, but you got 9 days look back. How do you account for what happened last year in the Q4? Do you take that somewhere, aggregate it somehow?
I'll repeat the question as best I can. So we are seasonal where Q4 has most of our traffic, but we have 90 days look back. And the question is, how does that work? Is that close enough? Yeah. Okay. Abby?
Yes, so even though we have 90-day look back, that look back, the raw data that the machine learning models use, that is near real time. The data that the machine learning models use to inform our decisioning, that is real time. So that doesn't affect the 90-day look back. We have got the 90-day look back just for our own purposes because we have billing that happens every 30 days. And that's primarily for our own investigative purposes, and there's no other reason to keep that 90-day look back. Does that answer your question?
Right, but then how do you get what seasonal effects to include in your algorithms?
Yeah, so the 90-day look back in Vertica is for the purposes of data engineering. Now, the machine learning models and the data science team have got their own storage, and they also look at a bunch of other things like aggregated data. So we don't drop any of the aggregated data, and that helps them a lot. Yep.
So it said you store data in AWS, Azure, and Alibaba. Wondering if you guys use GCP as well, and if you have like favorite cloud providers.
The question is, so we use AWS, Azure, and Alibaba Cloud. How come we don't use GCP? Is that because we favor? We are big users of AWS. Google is one of our biggest competitors, so naturally we've steered away from them. We have presence in China, so that's where we utilize Alibaba Cloud, and Azure, we just have some workloads on Azure that makes sense. So we don't favor specific cloud providers, but we choose the one which makes the most sense for our workload. Any other questions? Maybe this is the last one. Yep.
Where are this vertical data warehouse hosted?
Where is the Vertica warehouse hosted? Yeah. It's just mostly in the cloud. So we have had historically physical Vertica clusters hosted. If anyone knows Vertica, they have a new product called Vertica Eon, which allows you to run it in the cloud on EC2, backed by S3 storage. And so we moved to that model once we could move away from the old method, which was Vertica servers with disks in those servers to store the data.
Awesome. Round of applause. Thank you.
If you have more questions, we can talk after. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. We're going to just dive straight into our first talk. Sorry, not our first talk. I swear I've only been having lemonades tonight. So our next thing for tonight is a reInvent recap panel. We've got Sathyajith, who is an AWS community hero, but also works at the Trade Desk. And he's actually a site reliability engineer here at the Trade Desk. And he's also written books on practical Docker with Python, and also the co-author of the CDK book, and is an AWS Container Hero. So I think he's quite well credentialed tonight. So please come down, Satya. And then also as part of the panel, we've got Wendy Wong. She's a business performance analyst at Service New South Wales. Feel free to grab a seat. And she's also an AWS community builder. So both very well credentialed. I caught up with Satya at in Las Vegas in December at the event. Unfortunately, Wendy wasn't able to join us, but I think she took a lot of notes from all of the sessions. So just to make this a little bit interactive, out of the room, sort of put your hands up if you currently, work with sort of data engineering workloads on AWS. You're using sort of AWS with production workloads in any way, shape, or form. No, not many people. About 30%, would you say? Yeah, all right. Very interesting indeed. So hopefully, who's interested to hear?
Any of you been to reInvent? No one has been to reInvent? Wow. Really? Australia is quite far off, huh? So reInvent is AWS's flagship event. It's the event where they usually launch new services, any new major features that is coming into AWS. That's why they usually feature it. It's a week-long conference, and I say conference loosely because there's all sorts of activities. There's game days, there's a lot of meetups, there's a lot of talks, there's a lot of interactions, networking. So it's like a week-long extravaganza of all. And you are in Vegas for reInvent. You're going to see is all things cloud related. It's tremendous. It's so weird to come down to Vegas and not see a casino advert for a cloud. Sorry. We're going to talk mainly about data analytics because this is a data engineering meetup, but I snuck in a DevOps related announcement because I'm a site reliability engineer. I applied also to Data Eng before that. And but yeah, so one of the main themes this time at reInvent was the world is asynchronous. You should go watch Dr. Werner Vogel's keynote. Dr. Werner Vogel is going to be in Sydney, I think on Feb 2nd. Friday? Yeah. He's going to be, I think there's a link on AWS LinkedIn if you're interested. He started off with sort of a picturization of matrix, which was quite interesting. But the premise was that the world is asynchronous. And I think this is the first time that I've seen on a major keynote where people are talking about going to an async first world rather than, and by async, talk about works in cloud. It's been all things of event bridge, event in terms of SQS, basically event-driven world is what we're looking at. reInvent this time had, as per this, it was 50,000 plus. I think it was closer to 60,000 plus. There were actually 2,000 plus technical sessions. This is not a made-up number. And despite that, it's really difficult to get a session because most of them, they open the session registration during US times, which means for a slot in Australia, it's a hard sell because by the time Australia is woken up, most of the slots are gone. But they reserve like 30-40% for walk-ups, so you can always go there. But if you ever get a chance to visit reInvent, I would highly recommend you do it. It's a madhouse and it can be quite overwhelming as well. But it's always nice to meet people of similar mindset. I'm going to hand it over to Wendy because she's going to cover the first set of announcements.
Thanks, Sathya. And yeah, so thanks for introducing us to AWS reInvent. And yeah, it's one of the biggest tech conferences in the world. So I hope you get a chance to participate and get more involved in the AWS community as well, and attend AWS reInvent in Las Vegas once in your lifetime to experience it. And so before I start, what was your highlight of reInvent?
For me, it's always one thing. So Peter introduced me as a container hero. Heroes are, I won't say, we get honored by the title of heroes because of our contributions to AWS community. And one of the hero perks is that there's a private dinner, and usually the private dinners will have special guest speakers. And usually Werner Vogel's comes over as well, now it's no longer a surprise, but it's always nice to get. Can you imagine getting 2 minutes of probably one of the most amazing minds or the most famous CTOs? It's always good. And yeah, apart from that, it's just meeting so many like-minded people and being exposed to so many new ideas.
Thanks, Sathya. So as Sathya mentioned, the Amazon CTO, is actually, he's actually here in Sydney. He was in Melbourne to launch AWS Melbourne region last week, which is really exciting. And then also, so Peter and I are providing a talk on Friday. So if you'd like to join us, it's going to be in the AWS office in Market Street. And we're going to hear from Dr. Werner Vogels. So yeah, if you have time and you want to catch up on the reInvent announcements as well, I encourage you to go on YouTube, have a look at AWS reInvent. And I'm just going to share some of the exciting announcements in the data analytics space as well, which will really make a difference in your daily workload for if you're like a data engineer, or if you're interested in data engineering, or if you're a student and you want to get involved. So one of the latest announcements was Amazon Aurora's zero ETL integration. And this is really exciting because it allows you to actually create an Amazon Aurora cluster, and then the data that's actually created inside. And once you write your data inside, you don't need to use ETL, to move the data. So you can actually just, once the instance is created, the data will flow into your Redshift cluster, and then you have the same functionalities within your Aurora cluster to perform machine learning, to perform materialized views, and also data shares within Redshift as well. So that's really exciting, and it'll just actually make your life quite easy. So I encourage you to have a look at Amazon Aurora Zero ETL integration. And this actually allows you to also, have a look and analyze your data from multiple Aurora clusters. But the most exciting thing is you don't need to spend a lot of your time, building ETL pipelines. So your data will move from Aurora database straight into Redshift cluster in a matter of seconds. And the second announcement, and so this is currently in preview. I just wanted to let you know that it's currently available in the regions US East, North Virginia region, and with the zero ETL integration in the limited preview, you can use that within Aurora, MySQL 8.0, and MySQL 3. So I encourage you to have a look, research on zero ETL. And with the second announcement that we have as well, thank you.
Yep.
The second announcement is Amazon Data Zone. So the really exciting thing about this is being data producers, like data engineers, data scientists, when you create the data and you can basically create your data asset, which is the job of the data producer, and that data will be published straight away as a data asset, and then your data consumers, data analysts, can actually analyze and ask questions straight away. So I encourage you to have a look at Data Zone. So this allows you to collaborate more effectively as data engineers with your business people, and allow data analysts to access your data straight away from data engineers. So this is really about data democratization, allowing you to have greater data governance. Do you have anything else to add, Peter? You can ask Peter, who was at reInvent, about Data Zone. Do you want to share
Yeah, I
anything?
mean, I think Data Zone is kind of targeted a little bit at data mesh. I know sort of like Simon Aubrey's here, and the thought work is they always say about data mesh not being a product, but it's kind of got that vibe where it's sort of getting towards sort of data mesh as a product. I think that's kind of what it's aiming to solve, a lot of those sort of key asks about sort of data mesh around DATs and things like that. So I think it'll be really cool. It's I think the preview's coming soon. So yeah, really great call out, Woody.
Yep, so with Data Zone, I just want to add on that you can actually test it. It's currently in preview. It's available in the regions US East Virginia, US West Oregon, and Europe in Ireland as well. And this allows you to actually quickly build your data asset, publish it, and then you can search for that data straight away as a data consumer. So that you can collaborate easily. And the second and the third announcement that we have is we have quite a few AWS Glue updates, but I'm just going to focus on AWS Glue data quality. So you may have used Glue for your ETL, and we know that it's a serverless service that you can build data pipelines. And the great thing is you might have used AWS Glue Data Brew, like myself as a data scientist. So when you import your data in Data Brew, there's a feature which is called data quality, and that allows you to quickly analyze the statistics, tell you the health of your data. And so we have Glue data quality that's just been released, announced at reInvent, and this is really exciting. And this allows you to, analyze the health of data stored in your data lake and also your data warehouse. And it will actually gather all the data statistics and tell you the health of that data as well. And you can also set rules. And then set rules to actually, use it with your AWS Glue extract as well and build it into your data pipeline. So that's something really exciting. So I encourage you to explore all of these latest Glue updates as well. But I'm really excited about data quality. And so with AWS Glue data quality, it's linked with an open source DQ and allows you to evaluate your data as suggested. And it's currently available in preview in the following regions. So US East Ohio, US East North Virginia, US West Oregon, and Asia Pacific Tokyo, and Europe Ireland. And so there's quite a few other data analytics services that you can explore as well. We just wanted to showcase a few of the new exciting ones, especially the ones announced by our CTO, Werner Vogels from Amazon. And so if you'd like to explore any of these or catch up on the announcements, I encourage you to watch the keynotes on YouTube. So just search AWS reInvent, and you can have a look at all of the announcements from Andy, Werner, and what was the name of the Vice President, Swami?
Swami.
Yes, Swami, that's it.
Yeah.
And I'll just hand it over back to Satya to close.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm going to continue with this. This is something which I found interesting. Has any of you had to share data sets after having to redact information? Export data from databases, redact out. If you have not done it, I've done it before, and it can get fairly tedious. So I found this very interesting. It lets you collaborate without sharing the raw data. So you create what is known as a clean room. You export the data that you want to share. You can set up queries that you can run. You can limit it. You can limit aggregation. You can set up analysis rules, and you can essentially share this with with partners and with agencies. And Defend is probably something that a lot of health, media, and probably ad tech people would find it useful because it's a lot of sharing in terms of data. But you can't share the raw data always because raw data is your secret source. Next up is OpenSearch serverless. This was probably one of the more controversial launches. Can someone tell me what is serverless? Anyone? What is serverless?
Take a guess.
Take a guess.
Using the cloud instead of your own servers.
Yeah, and a bit more, and do you want to add further as well? Getting clear.
You don't have to manage the hardware or
Don't
the
have to
platform.
Yep.
I think it's giving us like the first line.
Infrastructure as code.
Yes.
So AWS defines serverless as a set of four principles. One of them is don't have to manage your servers. One of the more key ones was it's supposed to be scaled down to zero. Of the more recent things that I've noticed is the scale down to zero has essentially vanished and has been replaced by pay as you go or pay for value. OpenSearch is if you've heard of Elastic or Elasticsearch, OpenSearch is Amazon's fork of Elasticsearch, which is essentially a search, a log aggregation search-based tool. AWS forked this because of licensing issues. Elastic made change their licensing to prevent AWS and other cloud companies from hosting it without permission. It's a messy legal affair. But I'm not going to talk about the legal aspects of it. What OpenSearch Serverless does is it provisions and it manages your cluster. So traditionally, if you run OpenSearch, you've had to bring up the hardware for it, the instances for it. You've had to manage the search as well as the compute as well as the index circuits. So what OpenSearch Serverless does is it manages this for you. It also enables auto scaling, all that stuff. It also decomputes compute and storage. So this sounds all nice. So where's the controversy in this? The biggest controversy is because serverless. And now when you hear serverless, what is implied is scale down to zero is implied. Like you expect it not to, cost too much. The way OpenSearch serverless works is you need minimum of 4 nodes, 2 for indexing and 2 for the compute for this thing. And these are running all the time, which sort of goes against the serverless principles. And yet here you have with something is saying OpenSearch serverless. So when we saw OpenSearch serverless on the keynote, everybody was happy, like wow, serverless is coming. And then you start looking into the finer details, and then you see must have 4 nodes running all the time. And everyone like no, that's wrong. So what else is next for serverless? This was actually in preview till like last week. I was just doing my final set of node checks, and I found out that they actually went GA this week. So if you want to go check it out, I think probably if you're a heavy user of OpenSearch and you don't want to manage, you don't want pain of manage the hardware, the instances, OpenSearch serverless is good for you. But if you're going to use OpenSearch serverless because you see serverless and it's assumed that it's going to scale down to zero, no, please go read the pricing documents before you start running. Otherwise, I think you are likely to get a minimum bill of hundreds of dollars, if I'm not wrong, depending on your instance type and whatnot. But the problem is you don't get to manage the instance type. So congratulations, you get a nice bill. The last one is DevOps. And any DBAs in the house? Huh?
Any DBAs in the house?
No DBAs?
No DBAs. XDBAs.
XDBAs?
This one up back.
There's one.
I'm a DBA as well. I used to be a DBA before I moved to cloud. So blue-green deploys. Premises, you have a running version of your system. You create a secondary deploy of your system. You test whatever you want on the secondary system. Things all work well. Tests go fine. There's no problems. There's no error rates. You switch over to the secondary side, and now the secondary is now your primary system. So advantages: you can experiment without having to worry about having too much problem if something goes wrong. You have fast fail, because if something doesn't work well on the new system, just flip back to the old one. Now imagine blue-green deploys is frequently used for usually web-based development, application development. Now imagine this coming to databases. People who have For example, if you're going to do a database version upgrade, this is fantastic, right? You create a blue deploy system on the green side. Let's say that blue is where you have your current system running. The green one is the new system. Do the upgrade, do your tests, it works fine. So you might be wondering, what's so great about Amazon RDS Blue deployment? I do this all the time. The beauty of the system is Amazon also manages the logging of the data.
You've been working on, or give your perspectives on new announcements and things like that, new trends in data engineering. Definitely, this is my time to do the spiel of sort of encouraging you all to sort of put your hand up if you've got something interesting to share. We're a very welcoming community. Like it's not a tough crowd at all. So we're always keen to hear what you're sort of working on and things that you can sort of share with us, because this is kind of I guess what this community is all about. Really, is trying to grow the field of data engineering here in Australia. I think the field of data engineering has been growing really quite well over the last couple of years, but it'd be really impressive to see some fantastic sort of frameworks, data engineering startups, these sorts of things spring out of Australia, and we're already kind of seeing that already. So that's kind of our main goal for this year, aside from sort of continuing to build this community in the conference. I wanted to thank our amazing sponsors at the trade desk, Daniel and Barbara, once again. It really is, been an absolute pleasure to, be hosted here tonight. Really fantastic, and just encourage you all to sort of now sort of network and enjoy each other's companies. It's been a long couple of years after COVID, so enjoy. Thanks for rocking up tonight. Thank you.